everybody, welcome to Emily Kate Made This. I am Emily Kate and I'm coming to you from Berlin in Germany. This is an episode mainly focused, I would say, I'm going to go half knitting, half sewing. For my trip to Stockholm, I wanted to make some clothes and accessories, so that's what I did, and I thought I would show you some of them now. So if you watched my previous video, I told you that I went to Stockholm in Sweden for my husband's 40th birthday, and that was last week. This time last week. Anyway, the weather was glorious, so there was one item I didn't get to wear, which I've just remembered I have left in the other room, so I will get that in a second. The first thing I decided to make was my, drumroll, lavender jumper. The rainbow jumper. I'll just show you, but I won't go into detail because I did a whole a whole video all about it. But this is the main jumper that I wore on my trip, although it was very hot, so I barely had to wear a jumper at all. And yes, I just said Stockholm in Sweden was very hot in April. It was bizarre. It was like 13 degrees, but felt like 25. It was so hot. I was in a dress and a t-shirt and I was melting. But then when we came back to Berlin, it was 16 degrees and I had two jumpers and a coat. And by the way, if you want to knit it but you're a bit nervous about vintage patterns and understanding them, and this one is really confusing, Susan Crawford has just released this under the name Jojo from the movie Jojo Rabbit, where Scarlett Johansson wears this. And Susan's made the pattern available in 17 sizes, and she's readjusted it for different, more modern yarn, because this yarn is not available anymore from the original pattern. But there is a slight catch that the book that the pattern comes from is being released one pattern at a time. So if you do want to get the pattern, you have to buy the book, and then I think it's November, the hardback copy will come out. I already pre-ordered the book, and each month you get a PDF version of the patterns, and at the very end, when they're all finished, you will get the hard copy book if you order it. I imagine at some point in the future she'll sell individual patterns, but just in case, because I know a lot of you messaged me and said you'd love to do vintage knitting, but having a 40-inch chest or 100-centimeter chest means you just don't know how to do it. So if you wanted some vintage knitting patterns that were adjusted to modern day sizes, I highly recommend Susan Crawford. I received her pattern yesterday for the Jojo, and I kind of really want to make this again following her pattern, just out of curiosity for what it's like. What was intriguing to me was the original pattern I could not get gauge. It was really difficult because the needles, I think, were 4mm, but using light fingering weight yarn, and I couldn't do it. And when I did do, the fabric just was airy and I wasn't a fan. So I ended up going down to 3.25, I think, millimeter needles, and this one is Jamieson Spindrift yarn, and my gauge is 32 stitches per inch. I can't remember what the original pattern was, but Susan's is 30 stitches per inch. So inch? No, that would be insane. Per 4 inches, 10 centimeters. So I'm kind of sort of at the same gauge with this yarn, so I might try it again. I'm not sure, but I love these colours so much. I haven't got a clue what colour I would go with for the next one, but for now I will enjoy this one. It took me about 4 or 5 weeks to knit, and my mum did the ribbing on the sleeves and the bottom. So if she had not done that, it would have taken me an extra week at least to do. So it was definitely a labour of love. So that was the first thing that I knitted for the trip, and I love it. The other thing that I knitted for the trip and then never wore was my beret. My matching beret. Again, I just talked about this in my last video, but this is kind of a roundup of everything I made and I just wanted to show it again. Also curious how it looks with my hair down instead. I think that might look a bit better than the last video. I looked a little bit like Toad from Mario. I haven't got any pictures of this one yet, so I really must do that. This one is a pattern by Squidney Knits, and she has a Patreon and also vintage knitting. Highly recommend. She has a home front jumper and I really want to make it. The only issue I'm coming up against is the patterns are not in sizes. How do I explain that? You have to do your own calculations based off gauge in order to get your personal stitch count for the yarn you have. And as if you know me, if you have watched any of my videos, you all know me and Gauge, we're not friends. Gauge swatches don't ever come out the same as when I knit the actual item. Even if I knit it flat or knit it in the round, knit it with the right needles, blah blah blah, I've never ever got the same gauge. So it's a little bit scary to get a whole jumper based off of your numbers, based off a gauge that you know is probably not going to be the same gauge as when you're actually knitting it. So I'm a little bit nervous about that. I have done some calculations and then I got very confused, so we'll see. We'll see. This one wasn't based off gauge, but there were two sizes and I still haven't checked the gauge. It fits, it's not too tight, but I would say it's probably too loose. Like if it was a windy day, I'm not sure if it would stay on my head. And it's really wide, but again, I haven't checked. I think that is how wide it was supposed to be. It's just maybe an inch bigger or 2.5 centimeters bigger circumference than my other ones. So it's just taking me a bit to get used to it. But I love the colours. And I have only worn it once, and that was yesterday because it was cold. But it never got a chance to be worn in Stockholm because the weather was so nice. Which I won't complain about. So, yep, I talked about this in my last episode. One thing I did forget to mention, I'm eating my hair. Blah, blah, blah. One thing I forgot to mention on my last episode was this brim. It's not ribbing, you knit in stockinette and then a row of purl and then more stockinette and then you fold it and knit it on the inside together. I did forget to mention that. Otherwise, it's a nice slip stitch pattern and I really like it. Ooh. And one thing I wore on my journey, but I didn't make it for this trip, but I thought I'd mention it because I get this is the only jumper that when I go out, people stop me on the street and ask me, did you make that? And that they like it. And it's my Tulip. Nobody ever really talks to me on the street unless they're telling me to get out the way. And this is like the bonding jumper. People see this when I'm sitting on a train or waiting at the train station. People will come up to me and ask me about it. So I'm gonna take it as a compliment and not like, oh, that looks like a handmade item. They come over with excitement. So yeah, this is the Melody Hoffman jumper Tulip. I made it in 2021, I think. I'll try and link it if I remember up here. I knitted this in 2 strands of Plutolopi and it was supposed to have mohair with it, I think, and I forgot. But I love it. I really love this jumper. The only thing I don't like about the jumper is the neckline, and I added, if you can see, I added elastic to it just to bring it in a little bit. But if and when I make this again, I would do a different jumper pattern and add the tulip at the bottom. I think I did that actually before. I did the Felix for my Christmas jumper in 20, I don't know, I'll link it. I I used the Felix instead. The neckline just is so wide. I'm not a fan, but the rest of it I really like, and it's one that I go to all the time. So I thought I'd mention that. Okay, what did I sew? I'm going to talk about some knitting after talking about what I sewed for the trip, just to keep the contents together. This is about Stockholm, then afterwards I'll just quickly mention what I'm knitting on. So what did I sew? I sewed a dress. Here she is. Maybe I should get out of the way. I sewed this dress. It's a linen dress and I made it using the Senna pattern. I will put the picture that I usually put in here. I made two already. I made one for my birthday and one as a practice. And then I made this one. The practice one was using this cute little ice cream fabric. I'm going to put this down. I'm hoping I can get a video of myself wearing it, because I've been putting off doing this video because I haven't got any video of me wearing it. But I thought, now the sun is out, I'm going to take advantage of this and film, and then if later on it's still sunny, I can add in a video. But here it is. I had some trials and tribulations with this dress. I might add footage in now, or add footage in at the end about making it, because I wanted to do a whole video based on making this dress from start to finish, and it wasn't that easy. The first two times I made this dress, it was great. Then the second time, I don't know what I did, but my sewing brain was not in place. My sewing brain just went off somewhere else entirely. I managed to sew the pleats the wrong way around. I managed to sew the pleats and gather the pleats at the same time, and I had the weirdest looking dress ever. Then I managed to like attach parts of the bodice and the skirt together. Like, oh, I knew I should have stopped sewing at that moment, so I believe I put it down and went back to it the next day. But that was one of those, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong evenings with sewing. But I did it. I added pockets because I love pockets and they have been very useful. I use them to carry my phone around in Stockholm because they kind of merged into the dress. You didn't necessarily notice that there were pockets. The only issue was that the way that the pleats were formed made the pockets go right to the back of my dress, so it made the phone like sit around my bum, and that was a bit weird. But hey ho, I need some tea. Then after all of this, I think I spent 2 days making it, and I carried it in my carry-on luggage because we didn't take any hold luggage, and it's so bulky and big. It took up the whole bag basically, but I lovingly carried it, like made it, carried it, then I wore it, and then we went out for dinner, and my husband said, oh, you have to try this fermented like pickled beetroot and red cabbage. Do you see where I'm going with this? And he picked up a fork of this fermented goodness and he moved it over, and as he wafted it with his fork, it went all across my dress. It was stressful. I just saw the colours just seeping and bleeding out into the fibres. So he went and grabbed one of the waders and asked for a lemon, and I was dabbing it with water that I had in my bottle. Then he came back with a lemon and I was trying to squeeze lemon on it because I was in a restaurant and I didn't have any access to a washing machine or a sink or anything, so I haven't really checked since, I'm too nervous, but I did. Then at the hotel I dabbed it again with some water, and I don't think it's obvious. It's definitely not obvious enough that it's ruined. So I think it's saved, because once we came home, I did actually put it in the washing machine. Usually I wouldn't use a laundry powder with enzymes, but like BO, non-BO, I would use non-BO, but for this one, because it always says linen should be washed on like 30 or 40 degrees, or even sometimes cold, and not to have any kind of enzyme laundry powder, but I needed the enzymes to get out the stains. So what else? I got to play with my overlocker again. I'm very much enjoying my overlocker. It makes everything look so neat and tidy and lovely. I wonder if I can show you. Isn't that so satisfying? Yes, I'm very delighted with my sew. And then, oh, this chair. Then I decided I needed a bag. I wanted a light bag that I could carry just my phone and some water. And although I should have reinforced it because it nearly broke, I have to do that actually after I stop talking to you. I made the cutest little bag. It looks a bit weird when there's nothing in it because it should actually be round. It looks terrible. It looks better with stuff in it. This is the All Well Moon bag. I have to double check that. I think it's the Moon bag. And I used, obviously, leftover linen from my dress, and I used some dinosaur fabric because I love dinosaurs. I did do a slight mistake. I made 3 bags, and every single one I made a mistake. I don't know. It has a pocket on the inside, and I was supposed to have this linen on the outside with the dinosaur pocket. Don't know if this helps. Basically, this part was supposed to be linen and that was supposed to be dinosaur, and this was supposed to be the lining, but I put them in the wrong way around. Oops. And I also didn't have a long enough zip, and I thought I'll be fine. It wasn't, so I had to add some little extra bits on the side, otherwise you can see right into the bag. So I added some little dinosaurs there. It's this part here that needs reinforcing, because once I put water in there it started to not look so happy. I hope I can still reinforce it now that it's finished. I'm gonna give it a go. But it did a sterling job at being lightweight, matching my dress, of course, and really adorable with dinosaurs. So this was the first one I made, and I did do a few mistakes. The pattern actually recommends like a thick heavyweight canvas or cotton, maybe it was, like a sturdy bag fabric, not just a soft lightweight linen and soft quilting cotton. So on this one I didn't do it here, but I did interface with a thick interfacing the big round parts, and then also the zip. I interfaced that where the zip goes, and I interfaced the bottom part. But this one I forgot to interface. But I'll show you the next couple. They weren't made for stock.com, but they were made at the same time. And again, I wanted to do a whole video all about it, but when I'm sewing, I'm just not a relaxed human being. I get very confused very easily and get very stressed very easily, so I have to focus. And playing around with my camera means I don't focus. So I don't think I got any footage of doing any of the bags. So sorry about that. So that was the one I made for Stockholm, and it's adorable, and I'm going to use it throughout the summer as well. And then I made one for my mum and one for me when I go for walks. I don't need such a big bag. Every day we go for a walk around the neighbourhood, and I just take my phone and sometimes sunglasses, and if I'm wearing a dress I don't always have pockets. If I've made the dress I probably have pockets, but this one was more of a success in that I got everything the right way around. But there was a mistake and I don't remember what it was. So this is the big version again, and this one sits a lot nicer because the first time I did a whole load of mistakes I won't go into. This one was successful, and that's what I mean. The other one was bigger, and this one I actually changed the sizing a little bit so that wouldn't be there, but it's still there, so oops. Again, it has lining and a pocket at the front, which this time I interfaced. The other one's very floppy, but this one is interfaced. And then I made a baby. This one I also did wrong because I put both the pocket and then the other pocket instead of being on the inside. I also think it looks better when it's filled because otherwise it just sits a bit strangely. In the pattern they don't use interfacing, and it's all done with binding, bias binding, and everything looks fancy. Mine, I did this extra interfacing and then I don't know. Things happen with sewing and I can't explain them, but the main thing is it's usable, it looks really cute, and it's only me and my mother because I'm going to give this one to my mum. It's only us, I'm not selling them, so it really doesn't matter that there's some mistakes. I've got some puckering going on at the bottom because I think the lining came out too big or something, I don't know. But the main thing is it's adorable, even if it's not looking perfectly round. So yes, I highly recommend the pattern. It's a free pattern if you sign up for their newsletter, so do that. And finally, back to some knitting. I'm working again on my Chevron Jumper, the original Chevron Jumper. Picture somewhere. After I finished this one, I held up the original panel that I had made. Yeah, so this one, I know that it fits, and I held up this one. Difficult when you're holding it up. When you lay it down it looks a lot more obvious. But the only thing that's concerning is the ribbing, but I think it'll be fine because the ribbing on this jumper is quite loose. So I think it's going to fit. So with all this extra hope and enthusiasm, I cast on the second panel. This one is the front, which I finished a while ago. Then when I saw that it was really small, I gave up on it, but it has now been revived and I have almost finished the back panel. Maybe I'm 3/4 of the way through. And it looks really tiny when it hasn't been blocked. the difference between the two. I'll see if I can insert a video because I took one, but it might have been on Instagram. It really stretches out when you block it. So I'm on the final little bit of the back before I do the arm decreases. And then I've got just a little bit more of this pattern. Then I'm on to seat stitch and to finish the back. And then I have the sleeves. And then I'll have a jumper that fits. You can hear my husband wandering around. Yes, the original one that I made, well, no, this is the original, but then I made one and finished it, and it was, if you've seen it, enormous. R.I.P. So, I actually have to do some frogging, which I'm not looking forward to. I am really trying to embrace the frog. I don't know how you guys do it. I just think about all the hours, all the time that I did it, that I was knitting it. And then just to rip it all out, it's soul crushing. And I don't know how people are just like, oh well, I'll frog it. Like, I made this whole jumper, but then it's an inch too small, so I'll rip it all out and start again. I just don't have that enthusiasm. But I want to remake the one that I originally did in green, the one that I originally finished in green, and then I'll have two, one in the blues and one in the greens. But for now we will focus on this one, and I'm very close. I'm going to the UK in 2 weeks' time, and I was kind of secretly hoping that I would finish this in time for then, but I might have to adjust my hopes and dreams and think about finishing it in the UK. I can still knit on the plane and do the sleeves. I can still knit when I'm there, because I'm there for 2 weeks. And then when I'm back, I'll have a finished jumper. But it would be nice if I had a finished jumper to fly there in. Mainly because I have so many other vintage patterns I want to make that I want to get started so that my mum can do the ribbing again on the other one that she did for this one. She doesn't mind ribbing, doing the rib stitch. I just want to get to the pattern and do the fun stuff. Okay. I believe that is everything that I have been knitting and sewing on. That's what I made for Stockholm, and yeah, I don't think I need to make anything for my trip to the UK, but you know, this jumper, to finish that would be nice. Anything else? I think that's it. So that is everything. I would love to know if you guys are knitting anything vintage. Let me know in the comments. Or in general, what are you guys knitting on? So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye. Step 1, ironing. Fun, fun, fun. Time to start pinning. I started using my kitchen table instead of the floor because I get really bad neck ache. So it's working out well so far. The only problem is it hangs off the edge. So it has to be done in stages. Okay, bust darts are done. I need to iron them, but they're done. Now, I think onto the straps perhaps. That's a good idea. The rage is real. I got this freaking safety pin stuck inside and it broke, and I can't get it back out of the thing, and it's been like 20 minutes. Got it out. I managed to stab myself on the last hurrah, and now I've got blood in all kinds of places. Isn't sewing fun? Did that take about 45 minutes of my life? Yes it did. Linen is really hard to get through. I think I'd much rather just use a zip instead. Oh well, it's done now. So I decided to add some pockets to this dress because the other two dresses I constantly go to put my hands in my pockets and there aren't any. So, pockets it is. Well, I just got completely distracted. So, trying to sew, and I've just got a whole bunch of dinosaur friends. Yeah, we got these at Easter, and they've got dinosaurs. They're like plastic-free, organic chocolate alternatives to Kinder Egg, but without the egg. But delicious chocolate, and it's compostable. So, yay! I've honestly done this twice now. What am I doing? Why am I still sewing? I'm so close to being finished. I just keep messing it up. And I'm really hungry.